Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Welcome, Catholic pilgrims, to day 307 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. Today's message is going to be all about suffering and how people struggle to be at the side of someone who is struggling. When we first find out that someone is sick or has been diagnosed with a certain disease, we all rush to this person's aid and compassion is poured upon them. And, we want to do whatever we can to help them out. But as time goes on, people stop coming by as frequently. People stop asking as frequently. People even seemed a little annoyed that we're still sick. And Sister Faustina is going to talk about all of this today in our readings. So we will be reading from Notebook 5, numbers 1508 through 1513. January 21st, 1938. Jesus, how truly dreadful it would be to suffer if it were not for you. But it is you, Jesus, stretched out on the cross, who give me strength and are always close to the suffering soul. Creatures will abandon a person in his suffering, but you, O Lord, are faithful. It often happens when one is ill, as in the case of Job in the Old Testament, that as long as one can move about and work, everything is fine and dandy. But when God sends illness, somehow or other, there are fewer friends about. But yet, there are some. They still take interest in our suffering and all that, but if God sends a longer illness, even those faithful friends slowly begin to desert us. They visit us less frequently, and often their visits cause suffering. Instead of comforting us, they reproach us about certain things, which is an occasion of a good deal of suffering. And so the soul, like Job, is alone, but fortunately, it is not alone because Jesus' host is with it. After having tasted the above sufferings and spent a whole night in bitterness, the next morning when the chaplain, Father Theodore, brought me Holy Communion, I had to control myself by sheer effort of will to keep from crying out at the top of my voice, "Welcome, my true and only friend." Holy Communion gives me strength to suffer and fight. I wish to speak of one more thing that I have experienced. When God gives neither death nor health, and when this lasts for many years, people become accustomed to this and consider the person as not being ill. Then there begins a whole series of silent sufferings. Only God knows how many sacrifices the soul makes. One evening, when I was feeling so bad that I wondered how I would get back to my cell, I came across the sister assistant, Sister Serafina, who was asking one of the sisters of the first choir to go to the gate with a certain message. But when she saw me, she said to her, "No, sister, you need not go, but Sister Faustina will, because it is raining heavily." I answered, "All right," and went and carried out the order, but only God knows the whole of it. This is just one example among many. Sometimes it would seem that a sister of the second choir is made of stone, but she also is human and has a heart and feelings. At such times, God Himself comes to our rescue, for otherwise the soul would not be able to bear these crosses, of which I haven't even begun to write, nor do I intend to do so now. But when I feel the inspiration to do so, I will write about them. Today during Mass, I saw the Lord Jesus in the midst of His sufferings, as though dying on the cross. He said to me, "My daughter, meditate frequently on the sufferings which I have undergone for your sake, and then nothing of which you suffer for me will seem great to you. You please me most when you meditate on my sorrowful passion. Join your little sufferings to my sorrowful passion, so that they may have infinite value before my majesty." Jesus said to me today, "You often call me your master. This is pleasing to my heart, but do not forget, my disciple, that you are a disciple of a crucified master. Let that one word be enough for you. You know what is contained in the cross." I would encourage you to go to the back of your book if you have the ability to do so. In number 1510, Sister Faustina is talking about how she was trying to get back to her cell and she was feeling terrible. And this Sister Serafina comes along and is like, no, you carry out the order. I encourage you, if you can, to look in the back of the book because there's a little number there that leads us to go read a little bit more about that particular situation. What was happening is Sister Faustina was one of the sisters that worked at the gate, and she had been working there, and it had been raining, and Sister Faustina was already wet. And so this Sister Serafina has a message, and she's going to have another sister take the message to the gate, but she sees Sister Faustina at that moment. She's like, oh, okay, well, sister, you don't need to go. Sister Faustina's here. She can take it because it's been raining heavily. And what we don't see is that she already knew that Sister Faustina was wet. So she was like, okay, well, you just go. You've already been out there in the elements. And what Sister Faustina is trying to, kind of get across in her writings is she was feeling terrible, absolutely terrible. And she just wanted to get back to her cell. And then this other sister comes along. And, it seems that a lot of the sisters in Sister Faustina's congregation aren't really recognizing how ill she is. And so she gets sent back out to the gate. And that was a great deal of suffering for her. If you read in the back, it does say that Sister Serafina wasn't meaning anything ill will. She wasn't trying to be rude or hurtful to Sister Faustina. She just recognized, hey, you're already wet, and so you can go. I just wanted to clear that up in case you were wondering what was going on in that situation. So suffering. Gosh, I know a lot of you that are probably listening to this may be going through some deep suffering, maybe really deep physical illnesses that I imagine leave you a little frightened, that as time goes on and you continue in this illness, if that's what God wills, that people will kind of drop off. I imagine there's a fear of great loneliness for those who suffer with physical or mental illnesses. My maternal grandparents were married for 63 years, I want to say. And after my grandfather retired in his late 80s, God bless him, he was such a hard worker. He was a carpenter and he just couldn't, give it up. But when he retired, he really went on the decline mentally, and he started to suffer from dementia. And it was so tragic and hard to see him suffer through that because my grandfather had always been this just strong man. I mean, when he hugged you at the door, it was like being hugged by a bear, and his hands were all calloused and just worn by hard work. And I miss his hugs because you just felt so safe in his embrace. And anyway, it was hard to watch him decline. There's one day where my grandmother and my mom wanted to go, do something special to get my grandmother out of the house because she was his sole caretaker. And so my mom asked, can you watch your grandpa for the day? And I was like, sure, I'll watch grandpa. Seems weird, but he loved to take drives. And so I asked him, I was like, grandpa, do you want to go on a drive with me? And he said yes. And so we got in the car and I took him out on country roads because that's what he loved the most. And as we were driving, he started talking about how he used to live out there and he never did. And, I didn't try to correct him or anything. I was just, oh yeah, just agreeing with him. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart to see him mentally suffering that way. But what was the most beautiful thing I've ever probably witnessed is the love that my grandmother gave to him. Like I said, she was his sole caretaker, which was hard on her. It's not like she was a spring chicken or anything. And she just would not hear of him going into assisted living facility or anything like that. And God bless her, she took such good care of him. And, towards the end, he didn't remember who I was or, any of my children or anything. And he was so frail and just was kind of a shadow of himself. But it just amazed me at the power of the bond of marriage when lived out to its fullest. To watch my grandmother care for my grandfather in his deep, deep suffering and doing a lot of really hard things that, you just don't want to really have to do. But she did them anyway. Gosh, I respect that devotion to her husband. And when he passed away, she just never fully recovered from him, not being there in her presence anymore. And she passed away about a year and a half ago. And so I just want to, talk about suffering because, physical suffering, if it's not manifest, outwardly, if we don't see a person really suffering outwardly where we can say, oh, yes, I can see why you're hurting. We do a lot of these things that Sister Faustina is talking about today. Initially when somebody has been diagnosed with something, we are all into being there for them and being a comfort and everything. And then, just as time goes on, people drop off, or like even Sister Faustina says here today, the longer the illness lasts, the less and less people think of you as being a sick person. And they kind of demand and expect things of you that maybe you can't do because they've just gotten so used to you being sick that they just don't even think about it anymore. And, my paternal grandmother as well, she cared for my grandfather just in the exact same way. And it was incredibly lonely for her because as, time goes on, people stop coming by because they don't want to intrude because, someone there in the house is sick and it was rough for her. But I have just a mass amount of respect for both of my grandmothers and their willingness to live out their marriage vows through sickness and health. And today's readings are a great opportunity for us to kind of do an examination of conscience. How do we treat people who are suffering? Do we doubt them? Do we stop offering our help? Do we, give them all kinds of solutions? Sister Faustina here today talks about that. And people start, kind of criticizing you and telling you what you need to do. And do we do that? Do we tell people, oh, if you just did this, 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 and this, you would be better? And it's a great opportunity for us to really look inside of ourselves and ask that question. And I know when I ask myself those questions, the answers are not very good. Not at all. And I don't want to be the kind of person that Sister Faustina is writing about today. People who cause more suffering by leaving people or doubting people or trying to find solutions for them when they just don't really need to hear that. And I think one of the best things that we can do for those who are suffering through a sickness is just to be a presence. We don't need to solve their problems unless they ask. If they ask for advice, sure, offer up some if you have some. But just to be there and let them maybe grieve, to listen, to be a presence so they're not alone. Like I said, I think a lot of people who have chronic ongoing illnesses do fear being alone. And so those are things that we can all do better at. And the last point I would make is if you are somebody who is suffering like Sister Faustina, Christ today offers a great comfort. It's not as if he doesn't know what it's like to suffer. And so we can bring our anguish and our pain and our sorrow and our fears to him. And he's going to understand that. Most of his friends left him as well. It was really his mother and St. John and some of the other women who were there, but all the others left him. So he understands that feeling of being left. And so you can bring all of this to him and just let it out, pour it out. He is not going to be mad at you for having those kinds of emotions. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here for day 308. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.